YNW Melly has been facing a tough battle. He's spent nearly 6 years behind bars, still fighting a double murder case that continues to drag on. Now, as his bond hearing gains momentum, an old clip of him talking about his alter ego, Melvin, has resurfaced and is quickly going viral.
When the night hits, he really come, and it's like, Melvin just like, once you play with Melly to a certain extent, Melvin just don't like that. Melvin on your way.
It might sound like classic Melly behavior, but fans are convinced he revealed more than he intended in that now viral clip discussing his alter ego, Melvin. The clip is part of a much longer interview that's now being dissected, frame by frame, with some believing it could shift public perception and possibly the outcome of his case. Enter the documentary that's raising new questions and gaining traction fast. Any serious conversation about this trial has to include how YNW Melly has been acting in court recently. His behavior first drew attention on day 3 of the trial, when he was seen sitting quietly with his hands folded and eyes closed, appearing to pray. He then opened his eyes and blew kisses toward the courtroom gallery. Among those who noticed was Juvie's mother, Leandra Phillips, who later spoke to NBC Miami, expressing her frustration. "You did it a couple times. That wasn't his. First time. I walked out because I don't know what you're praying for. You're sitting there like you ain't got no remorse. Every time I walk in, you smiling. This ain't the time for that. This is sad. This case is serious." Melly's courtroom behavior hasn't gone unnoticed. Also been spotted laughing and joking with his lawyer in one strange incident caught on video. He appeared to make intense eye contact with someone in the gallery while repeating the same phrase over and over, growing. Visibly agitated, online reactions have been mixed. Some believe his actions show a lack of concern for the severity of the charges, while others argue that after being incarcerated since early 2019, this kind of behavior might just be his way of coping. Yet Melly also appeared emotional at the trial's outset, wiping away tears when footage of his friends was played in court. Despite that, the pressure on him remains immense. Testimonies from medical examiners and Sergeant Williams back law enforcement's original claim. Melly allegedly pulled the trigger on both victims, and the stakes couldn't be higher. With the death penalty on the table, Florida's controversial new law means only 8 of 12 jurors need to agree for Melly to be sentenced to death, a rule signed into law by Governor Ron DeSantis. If convicted, Melly could be among the first to be executed under this revised standard. Jurors recently conducted a site visit that could heavily influence their verdict. As for what's come up in court, there's been no shortage of shocking revelations. Though Melly wasn't with Bortlen when he drove to the hospital with the bodies of Sack Chaser and Juvie, phone records show all 4 were together just 15 minutes early. Prosecutors also claim Melly contacted Fredo Bang to pick him up after the alleged murders. And then there's Felicia Holmes's testimony, which may be one of the most pivotal moments in this high-profile case. This development may have given Melly a potential ace up his sleeve, as it allowed his legal team to file for a mistrial. Even if he's ultimately found guilty, an appeal could lead the Florida Supreme Court to grant that mistrial, potentially giving the rapper a second chance to prove his innocence. Adding to the complexity, there was known tension between Melly and Sack Chaser just months before the murders. In a conversation with his mother, Melly was heard asking for a .40 caliber Gunther, same type of weapon, used in the killings. Initially, the prosecution struggled to establish a motive, even attempting to frame the case as gang-related with the help of Detective Danny Polt. But as noted earlier, Florida law doesn't require a motive for conviction. Testimonies from 2 medical examiners and Sergeant Williams have closely aligned with the forensic findings first reported back in February 2019. Still, one major gap remains. Law enforcement has yet to recover the murder weapon. This key missing piece prevents the prosecution from presenting an airtight case, even with the weight of all the other evidence. While courtroom testimony has revealed plenty, events outside the courtroom may offer even more insight. 2 developments in particular deserve attention, one involving YNW Bortlen, and the other, a wrongful death lawsuit that might finally provide the prosecution with the motive they've been lacking. Back in April 2020, Melly contracted COVID-19 and requested to be released on house arrest. His request was denied. Strangely, just 1 month later, Bortlen Hu faced 2 counts of accessory after the fact, and a charge of first-degree murder was granted house arrest. His lawyer confirmed that while Bortlen would go home, Melly would remain behind bars. And that's exactly what happened. While Melly has been locked up for years, Bortlen has essentially been living free. Then, in January 2023, reports emerged that Bortlen told law enforcement he was merely the driver. His own trial is set for October, giving prosecutors time to not only build a stronger case against Melly, but potentially use that information to Bortlen's advantage as well. So far, courtroom testimony has supported the claim that only one shooter armed with a single gun was responsible for both murders. What remains to be seen is what new revelations may surface before Bortlen's trial later this year. This entire situation is far from over, and the months ahead could prove critical in determining the final outcome. This situation also sets up a fascinating and potentially explosive dynamic between Melly and Bortlen. What happens if Melly's defense shifts toward placing more of the blame on Bortlen, or if Bortlen decides to cut a deal that implicates Melly in order to save himself? Considering both men allegedly staged a fake drive-by shooting to cover up the murders, it's clear that when it comes to protecting their own freedom, anything is possible. There's also the very real possibility that Melly has grown resentful of Bortlen over the years. While Melly has remained behind bars under difficult conditions, Bortlen has spent a significant amount of time on house arrest. Melly has been vocal about the harsh treatment he claims to have endured in prison, including having his phone privileges revoked for minor infractions. But that's not the worst of it. In an Instagram post, the rapper described fearing for his life and alleged repeated threats from jail staff. "I have been threatened by deputies, lieutenants, and sergeants who say they will hide me from the world and beat my ass every day. If I tell my lawyers, they'll lie and say I hit them first." He specifically named Sergeant Anthony Kidd and Lieutenant Jean Baptiste, saying, "have literally been hidden from the world. So I have no choice but to believe the next step is them beating me half to death, like they do to other inmates almost daily here at the main jail in Broward County." Given the stark difference in their experiences, it wouldn't be surprising if Melly feels betrayed or abandoned by Bortlen. As the trials unfold, the tension between them could become a key factor in how each side shapes their defense. Another major development outside the criminal case is the wrongful death lawsuit filed by the families of Sack Chaser and Juvian. October 2020. This civil suit targets both Melly and Bortlen and claims the murders were financially motivated.
From the day one, I believe that Melly was responsible for my son's death on October 26th when I first heard the story, because his explanation when I finally talked to him and Cortland on a FaceTime, their response and how they was reacting, they showed no remorse. They didn't act like they was grieving, like they lost a best friend or nothing. They was, in my opinion, they was in the best spirits. They never came to town, never came to my son's funeral.
If these claims are true and a deal really was on the table, it completely reshapes the narrative around the four men. They weren't just longtime friends. They were business partners entangled in a serious dispute over the future of their brand and a significant amount of money. That kind of financial tension adds an entirely new layer of complexity to the case. However, at least for now, this wrongful death lawsuit hasn't played a direct role in the ongoing criminal trial. The prosecution remains focused on reconstructing the critical hour between the group leaving the recording studio and Bortlen's arrival at the hospital in October 2018. As they try to fill in those missing pieces, the courtroom has seen a steady stream of expert testimonies and supporting evidence aimed at connecting the dots and building a clearer timeline of events.